Section 1. The Heart of Indian Governance, Part 5 of the Constitution. The Indian Constitution is like a rulebook for our country. Part 5 is a very important chapter in this rulebook. It tells us how the union government, which governs the entire country, is set up and how it works. Think of Part 5 as the engine of a train. It has different parts that work together to keep the train moving. These parts are chapters that focus on specific areas. We have Chapter 1, which talks about the President, the head of our country. Then there's Chapter 2, all about the Parliament, where our laws are made. Chapter 3 explains the President's role in making laws. Chapter 4 introduces us to the Supreme Court, the highest court in India. And finally, Chapter 5 tells us about the Comptroller and Auditor General, who keeps a check on the government's finances. Understanding Part 5 is crucial because it tells us how power is shared and used in our democracy. It's the key to understanding how decisions are made that impact all of our lives. Section 2. The President, our head of state. In India, we have a president, and Chapter 1 of Part 5 tells us all about this important role. The president is like the first citizen of India, representing our country on the world stage. How do we choose our president? It's through an election where members of parliament and state legislatures vote. The president has many important duties. They appoint the prime minister, who leads the government. They also appoint Supreme Court judges and have the power to grant pardons. The president's role is largely ceremonial, meaning they act on the advice of the prime minister and the council of ministers. However, their role as the guardian of the constitution is paramount. Section 3. Parliament, the House of the People. Chapter 2 of Part 5 takes us inside the Parliament, the heart of India's democracy. This is where our laws are made. The Parliament has two houses, the Lok Sabha, also known as the House of the People, and the Rajya Sabha, the Council of States. The Lok Sabha is directly elected by the people of India, while the Rajya Sabha members are elected by the elected members of the state legislative assemblies. Making a law is like a team effort. A bill, which is a draft of a law, is introduced in either house. It's discussed, debated, and sometimes even changed. Once both houses agree on the bill, it goes to the president for approval. After the president signs it, it becomes a law that applies to everyone in India. Section 4. Laws and the President, a Balancing Act. What happens if the Parliament isn't in session, but a new law is needed urgently? That's where Chapter 3 of Part 5 comes in, explaining the President's legislative powers. The President has the power to issue ordinances, which are like temporary laws, when Parliament is not in session. However, these ordinances need to be approved by the Parliament within 6 weeks of its next session. This power of the President is essential to ensure that the country can function smoothly, even when the Parliament is not in session. However, it also highlights the importance of the Parliament's role in scrutinizing and approving laws. Section 5. The Supreme Court, Guardian of the Constitution. Chapter 4 of Part 5 introduces us to the Supreme Court of India, the highest judicial body in our country. Think of it as the protector of our Constitution. The Supreme Court ensures that all laws passed are in line with the Constitution. If someone feels a law violates their fundamental rights, they can approach the Supreme Court for justice. The Supreme Court also resolves disputes between the union government and state governments. Its decisions are final and binding on all courts in India. One landmark judgment by the Supreme Court was the Kesavananda Bharati case in 1973. This case established the Basic Structure Doctrine, which prevents Parliament from amending the basic features of the Constitution. Section 6. Keeping Watch, the Comptroller and Auditor General. Chapter 5 of Part 5 might seem a bit technical, but it's about something very important: accountability. It tells us about the Comptroller and Auditor General of India, or KAG, who acts as the guardian of public finances. The KAG audits the accounts of the union government and the state governments. They check how the government is spending our money and whether it's being used properly. Think of the KAG as a financial watchdog. They make sure that every rupee from the taxpayers' money is used responsibly and transparently. The KAG then submits their reports to the Parliament and state legislatures, who then take necessary actions based on the findings. This ensures accountability and transparency in how our government manages finances. Section 7. Real-world applications, how Part 5 shapes India. Part 5 of the Indian Constitution is not just a set of rules written on paper. It shapes our everyday lives in countless ways. For example, when the Parliament passes a new law, say, related to education or healthcare, it's because of the framework set out in Part 5. The President's role in signing the bill into law and the Supreme Court's power to review its constitutional validity are all part of this framework. Similarly, when the KAG points out financial irregularities in a government scheme, it ensures accountability and transparency. These examples show how the principles enshrined in Part 5 translate into real-world impact, influencing governance and impacting the lives of every citizen. Section 8. The Constitution, Your Guide to India. Part 5 of the Indian Constitution, with its focus on the union government, provides a crucial lens through which to understand how our country functions. It highlights the roles and responsibilities of different branches of government and their interrelationships. As responsible citizens, it's not just important to know our rights, but also to understand how our government works. The Constitution, especially Part 5, serves as a guidebook to understanding the complexities of Indian governance. By understanding these principles, we can participate more effectively in our democracy, hold our leaders accountable, and contribute to building a stronger and more just India. So, let's take the time to learn about our Constitution, for it's the bedrock of our nation's strength and progress.